Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks. Welcome to our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try and make your world a little weirder. This is the Talkin' About Talk to a podcast. I am your co-host, Kyle, and with me as always,
it's Niall, and I'm really excited that we did that we're back with talking about Tua again this week.
It's Talking About Talk to a.
Sorry, talking about Talk to. It doesn't roll off the. I mean, it does, but it also doesn't roll off.
No, I think it rolls off the tongue. That's why we named the show that.
I know. I was searching for more of a clean talking. Are you talking at me? Talk to a.
Oh, okay.
And it didn't. You were really against that for some reason.
Yeah.
Well, and I still don't agree. I still don't agree nor understand to this.
Can I tell you why I'm against it?
Yeah.
Sounds stupid. I'll be completely upfront about that one.
Well, here's the thing. Talk Tua is kind of stupid. So I feel like the two of them kind of counteract each other. And if you put enough stupid things together, it makes a really smart thing.
Now,
that's what Paul Verhoeven tries to do in his movies about American society.
We are a lot like Paul Verhoeven. We're like two Paul Verhoevens split up into one podcast. Now, to be clear, this is Talking About Talk To, the show where we discuss the events of the latest episode of Talk To, starring Talk To a Girl, the woman who spits on a dick, I think is what that's all about.
You said earlier that you were doing some fact checking, and that didn't go around to learning the name of the person of the podcast that we're talking about.
Actually, I do have that information, but I guess I have to break up the bit a little bit. This is actually It Gets Weird. You are listening to the It Gets Weird podcast. Everything that I said up until now was basically a lie. And we're here to talk about we're here to talk about some weird shit. And this week we've got a documentary episode, which we have lovingly named this particular series of episodes "Fuck Your Documentary." Because, you know what? It's been a while, I think, since I've said this. But Fuck Your Documentary, FYD, is sort of about... I believe the name came from the fact that we watched documentaries. When you watch documentaries in the world of weird, you are way more likely to get something that is complete stupid trash than not. And I think...
Didn't we?
And it was a Stan Romanek thing, right?
Yeah,
that's what it was.
It was named after. We have a tendency to the first thing we do in any given series has a very first thought, best thought kind of situation. And that Stan Romanek documentary was so abysmal that the entire franchise had to get tanked before it ever began. And named a thing that you can't put on iTunes. So
insanely fake documentary about a UFO pedophile who's in jail. So fuck that guy and fuck that documentary. But I'm pleased to say we didn't watch anything to do with that bullshit.
No.
We watched technically an episodic series, but each thing really stands alone. This is Demons in the White House, part of the Shock Docs series. That's what we watched.
Yes, originally released as a series in 2020. Then put up as individual documentaries on Max in 2022.
And this was an episode that aired in 2021. I actually have a little, just to give credit where credit's due. This is directed by Brooke Linder. It's written by Andrew Piper. Don't know much about either of them, but those are the names that are accredited to this. And I'm just gonna throw it out up front, and you can follow suit.
Okay.
I really enjoyed this.
I feel like there's a caveat that I feel like I have to make. There's an asterisk that I feel like we kind of have to tease out and let it unfold naturally, because when I will agree. I enjoyed watching this a lot. It was a rip-roaring good time. I was enjoying myself for all 80-some minutes of it. And that's not something I can normally say with a lot of the documentaries we watch on this show.
Yeah, I agree. And I should also point out that I think we have covered one other documentary in this series before. They do an episode on the Betty and Barney Hill abduction, which is...
Yes.
I think we also enjoyed that. So yeah, big asterisk on my enjoyment of this. But nonetheless, I did very much enjoy it.
So Kyle, if you were to try to summarize, give like the 1 to 2 sentence elevator pitch for what this documentary is and like what it's about,
I have.
How would you do that?
Quickest pitch of all time. Okay. Dark, negative, paranormal confluence of energies created demons that did 9/11.
See, that's kind of the thing that's I was going to say, a look at the historical times where paranormal events took place in and around the White House.
Absolutely.
And kind of tease out but I guess we'll just start off balls to the walls. The giant asterisks on everything here is that this documentary really wants you to believe that demonic influences have pushed legislation through the White House.
It's awesome. So like, okay, let me just say this. What you said about the investigation of the paranormal history of the White House and stuff, that is true, but the takeaway is the demon thing, right?
Yeah.
Like that is the thing you're supposed to come away with from this documentary. Now, here's my takeaway as a person who thinks that's a load of fucking shit. Mm-hmm. Just gonna be upfront with you. I don't think demons are influencing, at least not demons in the sense that they're talking about. Demons like, Reagan and Nixon.
Well, demons should just stand for lobbyists in this movie. Like that's what they're actually talking about. You want to know why someone changed a policy position?
It was a demon.
Lobbyists.
Yeah. No. So, okay. I'm just going to tell you why I really enjoyed this. I told Niall, like, before we started recording, this documentary prompted me to open up like a dozen tabs about Abraham Lincoln, about Lincoln's views on slavery, about Franklin Pierce, about the Fox sisters. This era of history is one like the 19th century American history is very interesting to me, and they bring up interesting stuff from that historical period. They gloss over some shit that I was like, I picked up on immediately as being that's horse shit, and I looked into it.
Oh yeah,
so
for sure.
And then like it feels like the type of show. I mean, it is the type of show that you would put on like the Travel Channel or the Discovery Channel, but it's like a notch above like a Ghost Adventures type show. They do a lot of reenactments that are genuinely like fun, I thought. And so it's a bunch of good, fun stuff, but it's also like at the same time, I have to say, it's like stupid. It's stupid, but it's fun. They touch on real, authentic history, and then they also go out into the fucking ether of complete unbelievability. Like
every time they finish a point with actual historical fact, they then just cut to like 3 minutes of just absolute like speculation and vagary of like, and if you go back through history and there all these different presidents have seen ghosts and have witnessed dark energies in the White House, and then you go have things like 9/11, and it's just like, what do those two things have to do with each other?
Yeah.
Why are you putting a bunch of clips of like wars and shit next to you saying, people saw a ghost in the White House? It is every time it feels your attention getting a little bit strained, it just gives you a montage with someone saying demons did 9/11.
Okay.
And honestly, that's better than Subway Surfer to keep someone interested in something.
Yeah, I agree. Let me, okay. I want to start out sounding negative. Okay. Real quick here. And I want to add on to it. So if you're listening to this and you don't like what I'm about to say, just stick with me. Okay.
Okay.
You ever see that tweet or whatever, that zit or whatever people call them, where the person will like quote some other tweet or some political or whatever, and they'll just say, this shit must hit really hard if you're stupid.
Yes, I am aware.
That is this documentary. It also hits hard in a way if you're not stupid. And I would like to argue that neither of us are stupid.
I can put it on when I need to enjoy certain things. I will say, I think that the way I watched this lent some extra spice in that field, because
okay.
I don't know how you watched it, and I'm sure you'll tell me here in a minute, but I watched this like in bed, right before bed, on a TV while Jules was asleep next to me. And so I was just like having headphones on, all cozy, comfy, and with like a comforter on, hearing about how demons have influenced politicians throughout history to do 9/11.
Yeah.
And it was such a fun time. I had so much fun doing this.
Yeah. No, you know what? That's honestly hilarious, because here's how I watched it, okay?
Uh-huh.
There was snow falling, wind blowing outside. I had a hoodie on. I had this beanie on. I was laying down on the couch. I had 2 pillows that I was laying my head onto, and I had a blanket. So I was also very comfy, having a great time watching this, laughing, crying, all the things you do when you watch a Travel Channel style documentary about the paranormal influence on your most beloved presidents. So pretty similar vibes. Jules was not sitting like sleeping next to me or anything, so I didn't have that comfy thing there, but similar vibes. Now I want to add on to what I said about, because like basically if you're the person who watches this and is like, I believe in the paranormal, and saying that a demon influenced like massive decisions in United States legislature and stuff that would change the world, if you believe in that, I don't think you're stupid necessarily. I don't want to say that I'm calling you stupid, but like if you are stupid, you'd be like, whoa. This is like Joe Rogan, like, oh man, whoa, that's crazy. Like
it would be okay. This is actually a test that I don't know if I feel like there should be a metric that we could start to try to track of how many talking heads in any given documentary have appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast. And I think that might be an interesting metric of reputability for these documentaries, and the lower your Joe Rogan quotient is, the better chance your documentary has to not be full of shit.
There are some factors to consider with that, but I understand what you're saying. Now, speaking of the talking heads, I do have that information just to give credit. So there's a handful of people who are cut to provide commentary on the shit that they're showing you. So we have there's like the paranormal quote unquote experts, and like a couple of them I think are accredited as paranormal investigators. So we have Lauren Parker, Dave Schrader, and then this guy Joshua P. Warren, who I have definitely seen before. I'm not certain where. He has a website if you want to go buy some sigils. He has like a sigil of like monetary luck, a sigil of love, and you can go purchase that kind of stuff from him for probably very low prices and high quality,
reasonable prices.
But I've definitely seen him. Don't know where. They have some historians and authors. There was Lisa Morton, who is the author of Ghosts, A Haunted History. Jeff Bellinger, author of Communicating with the Dead. And then John Busher, author of The President's Medium, which I actually went and looked through a little bit of that. And it was actually pretty interesting. And then there's the obligatory, like, we have to have some not so paranormal inclined people. There's Jason Emerson, who's a historian, and then Michelle Gullion, who is the director of research at the National First Ladies Library. So, interesting people. I can't remember which person this was, but I did note that one of the talking heads kind of looks like if like Jim Carrey and Jerma smashed into each other.
Oh shit! Yeah, okay.
Sort of picture that. But it's the cadence you would expect, where it's like, you do get the history people like telling you some historical facts, and then they bring in the paranormal researcher who offers purely speculative madness about that particular historical tidbit. So, and here's a thought that I had watching this. Okay. There were times where there almost felt like this hint of like, and this only happened a couple times. It almost felt like there was a little bit of like testing the waters with this idea, because it happened so few times and it was just kind of like winked at. Okay. There was almost this suggestion, not even almost, there was this suggestion of information regarding the presence of paranormal entities and possibly including demons, is like a well-kept secret locked away at the White House that like people in government know about it. And what that says to me is that there is some, it's almost like the paranormal crowd, which, to say most cynically, a lot of grifters are like, can we capture the spark of the UFO disclosure movement that a lot of people are profiting off of?
Yeah, it really feels like they're going for ghost disclosure a little bit. They're also weirdly trying to like. There's a part of me that could read this documentary as pushing for a kind of satanic deep state reading of things, in a very kind of strange way. I don't think that was their intent, but by like all these vague, like, oh, look at all these tragedies in American history. What if demons were influencing the president when those happened? It like opens the door to this weird, satanic Illuminati kind of background that isn't actually directly represented in this episode, but maybe in the canceled season fucking whatever of Shock Docs we'll finally get the rap background.
No, I that's an interesting point, because I think if you put this documentary in front of a certain subset, a certain niche of the like paranormal believer community in the United States, you would definitely get people coming away with that takeaway, but I don't think it's present in the documentary.
It's like the Hitchcock psycho shower scene. There's not actually any stabbing in this movie, but your brain thinks there is.
Yeah, it's all about the stabs that aren't seen.
Yeah, exactly.
So all that being said, like, yeah, every time they're speculating about demons in the White House, it's stupid. But for me, that was still very entertaining.
Oh, yeah. It's very fun TV. Do you want to get into a bit of the like narrative that's weaved throughout this episode a little bit?
Yeah, we can talk about that. And I brought some stuff to the table that we can get into as we go through that. So the documentary is primarily focused on two presidents of the United States. They will hint at other presidents. They will they'll flash images of the Obamas, of Bush, of Trump.
You get a little bit of Reagan in there too.
Little Reagan, little Nixon. You get a little bit of all of it. You get Bush's daughter talking about the place being haunted for a little bit. Yeah. She's on like what, The View. It's like a clip from The View or something, a show like that.
Something like that, yeah.
But the documentary focuses on two former presidents, which it's kind of funny. Franklin Pierce and Abraham Lincoln. So really what you have here is maybe the most well-known and in many cases well-regarded presidents of the United States, historically speaking, Abraham Lincoln. And then like the president that like I straight up forgot existed until I watched this again, Franklin Pierce, who I think notoriously was not well liked. They
in the documentary cite him as largely considered the worst president of all time.
Yeah,
and recent events might bring that into question, but the case is there. I forgot he existed.
Yeah, I forgot about Franklin Pierce, but like them talking about some of his shit brought it especially like with regards to his like political decisions leading up to the election of Abraham Lincoln and the like intensifying of the tensions that would lead to the Civil War. I was like, oh God, yeah, okay. I kind of remember this from high school history a little bit.
Yeah. I don't remember all the dead son stuff though.
No, that's not brought up. That's not brought up.
The main thrust of this documentary, I would say, is like losing your son, especially your favorite son, which they like to very specifically target. That these parents are playing favorites.
Yeah.
Losing a son and being president is a combo that ends in death.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. They talk about tragedy following Franklin Pierce, who the documentary starts by focusing on him. And they give you a little background. I think something that's interesting and important is like Franklin Pierce, I don't know whether they like say specifically like what his religious bend is. But his wife, the First Lady Jane Pierce, she, I can't remember if this is like called out specifically in the documentary, but they do say that she's like religious and spiritual, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's important to note that she was like deeply Puritan. So I
believe they do mention that.
Do they mention that? Okay. Because like some of this was me going and like fact checking a couple things and reading about this stuff.
The one that they weirdly don't give you, that they make it seem like it's very hard to tell, is Lincoln,
which is insane. And another thing that I like went and like read about because I was like, that doesn't sound right at all.
Yeah, I heard that and I was meaning like, I think that's like, I'm pretty sure
that's wrong.
There's that it's like part of textbooks I've read.
So
his religious beliefs.
To be clear, we can get into that, but like, there is like one talking head who like casually out of nowhere. You're talking about the Lincoln thing, right? Where he says one of the talking heads basically out of nowhere is just like, yeah, so like Abraham Lincoln actually didn't really care about ending slavery. He just wanted to keep the states unified. That's not true. I went and looked into that, and I want to come back to that point later because right now we're talking about Pierce. But I want to bring that up now because it was fucking weird. There's a couple things like that are weird that make me feel weird. That were the worst parts of the documentary. But we'll
the doc really wants to make a lot of things about Lincoln a mystery that are really
not a mystery, really. Yeah. I mean, like, okay, no, we'll get back to the Lincoln thing. So Franklin Pierce, right? January 6th, 1953, he's freshly elected, and their son, 11-year-old Benny, is killed in a really horrible train accident, and that was a little alarming.
Yeah. Well, after they've already had two other kids die, and like
but this was the best one.
Yeah, the wife is already blaming her husband's political career for the deaths of their children, and he's like, "Whoops, I'm president now."
Yeah.
That was a really striking part of it for me.
Pretty fucked up. I just like blaming him for his political career as a Puritan, your whole thing is that your suffering in life is a punishment from God. There is like almost like God is almost present in your physical reality as like a mechanism that punishes you if you do things wrongly. So like to her saying that his political career is the reason his son died, she means that very literally, I think, is the idea here. Yeah. And she's like, they also talk about like she was very sickly, I guess. So like it almost makes me think that to her state of like permanent sickliness is also probably an affliction sent from God. So she's doing something wrong with her life. So it's all to say that there's like some pretty serious turmoil going on with this woman. So to lose this child in the way that they did, his like head gets crushed by a train. It's super fucked up.
Yeah.
And in the reenactment, they like show the body of the child and they go to remove the hat from the face and you see like just the corner of the face that's crushed. I was like, that's deeply dark for it took me a little off guard, I must say.
Yeah, it was like, and then they inserted the boy into a lot more reenactments than you would expect. Eventually, I keep getting ahead of myself, but they use the boy as the paranormal villain entity of this entire documentary, which is
funny,
interesting.
Oh,
funny too. Yeah.
Well, it's like he keeps reappearing as an apparition. I think it's a bit speculative to say that Franklin Pierce, because like I couldn't find anything suggesting that Franklin Pierce was like genuinely concerned about apparitions of his dead son. Mm-hmm. But there is some good evidence about Jane believing that she could at least contact the dead son. So yeah, he like reappears as an apparition. And every once in a while, like to do sort of like a jump scare type thing, you'll see like out of the corner of your eye or like in a flash that his face is all fucked up.
Yeah, they do the fucking CGI spooky face on the boy. Like
it's so funny. So yeah, so this the big point here is that this situation, losing their son, now the Pierce family is in the White House, and that leads to Jane to conduct a seance, which again, that's a real thing that happened. Now here's the thing that they gloss over.
Okay.
That I think they should have maybe talked. They talk about the Fox sisters.
Correct.
Very interesting characters. We've mentioned them because I think it was in the first part of my series on parapsychology. So,
okay,
parapsychology draws deeply from the spiritualism movement that would kind of be. I don't want to give all the credit to the Fox sisters, but they're a big fucking deal.
The documentary does. It's okay.
The documentary, that's true. That's true. There's other stuff to consider, but like the documentary does, in fact, kind of say that the Fox sisters are the reason for spiritualism becoming a thing, and
paranormal research. Like they cite them as like the origin point for like spirit photography and shit. Even
and that's the thing is like they're sort of correct, but like to there's more to it, right? So like parapsychology, paranormal research as like an official study. Is in fact there's a lot of it born out of spiritualism, and spiritualism owes a lot to the Fox sisters. That's what they should be saying. So, but they do kind of get into some stuff that I'm like, this is good context to have about the Fox sisters and spiritualism. So like they very briefly gloss over the fact that the Fox sisters were often sort of like proven to be frauds. Like, people were investigating them. There were like magicians looking into them. There was commentary, I think, from who's the very famous Houdini, I believe, even like lended his opinion on the whole thing. We've talked about them before. I think I need to just do a Fox Sisters episode sometime, because
it's probably worthwhile. Yeah.
There's other really wild shit surrounding them where like there were like bones that were found on their property that may have been planted and may have been fake. It's hard to say. And they like they're like, so they were the target of debunkers, but also like they felt like two of the sisters fell into alcoholism, which is tragic. And then there was like infighting between them. And then they would go out and like two of them would like basically be on stage confessing about faking this stuff. And one of the weirdest little factoids is one of the sisters, the way that she would like fake the like rapping on walls and doors, which was like one of the big things that attracted people to their brand of spiritualism and like sort of seance-y shit. The rapping on the walls, she could do that by cracking the tendons in her toes.
Jesus. Okay. So she was like flexing and it wouldn't show anything on her.
Right.
Like it wouldn't. But it made enough to make a knocking on. Okay.
Right. So they could do weird. And you know what's crazy about that? I'm doing it right now. I have like a tendon or something in like around my ankle that I can flex, that if I press that ankle up against like a table or a chair, it makes the loudest fucking cracking noise. It's like alarming. So I have a similar gift as one of the Fox sisters.
Yeah, so you really should be out there fucking hoodwinking people for tens of dollars.
Yeah. So, no, it's very interesting stuff, but they like basically are like, yeah, people like Houdini kind of looked at the sisters and were like, we don't believe you. And then they move on and just sort of talk about how important the Fox sisters were to spiritualism and how important spiritualism was for people at the time. And I, kudos to them for bringing up how spiritualism was hugely popular. It was a very popular thing. It was like this affirmation for Christians that you could like stay in contact with the dead, that there, and it was also like seances and like mediums and stuff were like proof that like you could communicate with the other side, with the like Christian life after death. Like it, So it was very popular, and they even mentioned this in the documentary. Super popular during the Civil War because there were so many fucking people being killed and dying. This is also the era of like diseases that are difficult or impossible to treat. Like, so spiritualism, very important presence at this time. And that's why when they're just like, they say this stuff where it sounds like it's like so fucking remarkable that Jane Pierce had a seance in the White House. Saying it's like remarkable or like novel for these presidents' wives to indulge in seances during this era, it's like it's novel for Trump to serve burgers and chicken nuggets in the White House during the era of McDonald's. Like it's kind of silly to me. Especially given the religious background of Jane Pierce, but they make it sound like it's this crazy thing when I don't think it really is.
Well, because do you want to know why that is?
Sure.
Because they had half a story. Like,
right.
This whole documentary is
that's true.
The story they have is literally the first ghost seen in the White House was a grieving mother getting some closure on her son through a seance. And that's like the money shot.
That's
like,
that
is like
story.
The thing they have.
Yeah.
And so everything else around this, they have to dramatize and vagary, surround it in vagaries to the point where if you just like go back and stop the documentary every 5 or so minutes and just try to recount the actual order of events, it'll become apparent very quickly. There's so much extra bullshit in this documentary.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's part of the fun of it. Like, you get caught up in it, and they try to make this like unconnected, really, series of events into this whole paranormal drama that crosses multiple presidents.
Yeah,
and it just, there's so much fucking legwork being done by the talking heads trying to fill in these gaps.
That's definitely true.
Like everything has to be entirely without precedent, and everything has to be an earth-shattering thing, because otherwise there's nothing to talk about.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. I would really love a documentary that's dry as hell and full of historical facts about this exact thing, the Pierce family and their relationship with spiritualism and all that. Like, I would genuinely be so interested in hearing about that, but that doesn't really make for an exciting general populace, like, click on the TV. Oh, they're showing demons in the White House. That sounds awesome.
That gets 2/3 of its Kickstarter fulfilled, and then has to shut down before they get the rest of the money. Like, that's what that doc does.
Yeah.
Now, but hey, I'd watch it.
I wanna bring up one of my fact check things.
Oh, great.
One of the things that immediately like set off an alarm to me was, at one point they are talking about the tensions in the United States and Franklin Pierce as president kind of doing a lousy job, and he has to make like big decisions regarding legislature, which at the time, like, the big issue is slavery in the United States. Which so they talk about how he was going to sign, he was like, they're presenting him with this thing called the Kansas-Nebraska Act, right?
Yep.
And to further go into that speculative madness, they're like, well, he wasn't going to sign the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, he changes his mind. Was this demonic influence? Did he... They have a whole running thing with the demonic stuff in the White House, saying, like, when you're at your weakest moment, when you are at, like, a stage in your life where it's just like a confluence of negative emotions, that's when demons get you. And that's where Pierce was at when he just suddenly out of nowhere decided, I'm signing the Kansas-Nebraska Act.
Yeah, basically, my son died, so I'm going to start the Civil War.
Yeah, it's like,
all right.
It's so funny. They are like, there's no other reason. It's like totally like, why would he sign this? And the demons are going like, hey, now's my chance. The Kansas-Nebraska Act, I'm gonna fucking do it. That's what they say in this documentary. Now, here's what I learned about this, because I was like, that cannot be true.
Oh, that
he didn't suddenly change his mind.
Yeah.
Like, obviously the demon thing's not true, but there's a lot more to it. Basically, here's what happened, okay? Franklin was a 19th century style Democrat, which I'm not going to get into like the nuance of what that means, but suffice to say, I think that the Republicans at this time were a bit more liberal policy-wise, and in Democrats a bit more of the inverse. It's different than that, and Democrat and Republican don't really mean what they mean to us now. It's a little different. So he's a Democrat. He's also an opponent of the abolitionist movement. So he is like not supportive of slavery abolition. And the guy who drafted the Kansas-Nebraska Act was the Democratic Senator Stephen Douglas. And Douglas was this like proponent of popular sovereignty, which for this particular situation means he believed that each state could dictate the legality of slavery for itself. And I got the impression that this stance on slavery was kind of like centrist bullshit, because nobody's pleased by it. Like, the slave-owning states don't like it. The abolitionist states don't like it. And one of the things that was bundled into the Kansas-Nebraska Act was a repeal of the Missouri Compromise. And the Missouri Compromise was legislation that was basically a means of preventing expansion of slavery. Specifically, they were like, you can't expand slavery into these states, these particular states, and repealing that would allow that to go through, basically. So repealing that by signing the Kansas-Nebraska Act was a bit of a hard stance on slavery expansion, and Pierce was like not into the idea of doing that, right? Like he didn't want to take a hard stance. Like there's a lot of stuff where it almost feels like they're sort of like looking for like a practical unifying sort of solution. Is sort of the idea. But the guy who drafts the bill, Stephen Douglas, convinces him. I think they straight up have a private meeting where he's like, you should do it because of X. And I have here a quote from Stephen Douglas to give you an idea of what he believed. He says here, quote, "The great principle of self-government is at stake, and surely the people of this country are never going to decide that the principle on which our whole Republican system rests is vicious and wrong." Meaning, our system rests on slavery, right? So, anyways, point being, to make that situation sound like a demon suddenly caused him to change his mind is completely absurd.
Yeah. Well, you see, he lost his son before he took office, and then a year later, he suddenly changed his mind on this piece of legislation.
Right.
So that has to be demonic influence. It's the only thing that makes sense.
It's gotta be it. It's the only thing that makes sense. Well, like, it's like, even just to say that he suddenly changed his mind on like making a giant important, political move is just ridiculous. Like, regardless of the demon aspect, it's like that. I don't think that's how that shit goes down, especially not at this time. Saying all this, I could be stupid. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe a lot of presidents have just really been like, you know what, fuck it. I actually kind of want to sign this one, and I don't want to sign that one. I don't know how that works. Maybe I don't understand, but that's sort of my personal assessment from the little armchair history reading I did. So I don't know. It's really insane.
But you're saying there were more factors than demons involved in the making of this decision.
I mean, the demon might have been a part of it, but like, to say it's only the demon, come on.
Yeah.
God, what else is there to say? His wife dies.
True. Yeah.
It sounds like Pierce had a bad time.
Kind of haunting the White House. They called her the Phantom of the Lighthouse because she was very sad that her child died. We didn't mention, you were talking about how Franklin Pierce was a liberal kind of the time, like he's kind of a centrist kind of guy.
Yeah.
Not modern day centrist liberal, not in terms of the time period. But they use a term that I've never heard before that I really liked, where they called him a doughface.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which basically meant that he was a northerner with southern sympathies, aka he wasn't necessarily concerned with the abolition of slavery. Doughface. That's one that we should bring back.
That's good. God, just hearing all this makes me want to read more history, because that's doughface is a pretty good term for this guy. It's God, I'm trying to think, because like at one point they bring in. They're referencing a lot of things that when I looked them up are like real. So the seance really did happen. But they also like bring in like, it's like a priest, right? Like there's a priest there. They're kind of hinting at.
Yeah. They make up an exorcism.
So that I don't think actually happened.
So here is how this happens in the documentary. The seance has happened. She's had kind of her cathartic moment with the boy, Benny, but is still kind of, still interested in spiritualism seemingly later on in her life. But then there comes a point where so much dark energy has transpired in the White House that the talking heads, in their minds, the talking heads start to say, we don't know for sure that they never had an exorcism at the White House, while footage of a reenactment of an exorcism in the White House starts to play.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there going, this seems a little overreaching, maybe, in terms of the speculation here, having like a cardinal, someone dressed as like a cardinal coming in to the White House and like laying out implements.
And
while they're going, I don't think there was ever there's no records to be found that state there was an exorcism in the White House, but there was a lot of dark energy, so they might have obfuscated the records, and that's the kind of thing you wouldn't want people to know about, and you're just like, this is a documentary.
Yeah, that is definitely insane. But
one of the wildest things.
This thing that didn't happen may have happened because there's no evidence to suggest it didn't. So,
and also there's like a point where they kind of just say that if you're a first lady, you're into some weird spiritualism shit by being like, yeah, Nancy Reagan was into astrology, and so was also into astrology, and they're just like, it's all just the same shit. All first wives are into this stuff.
Pretty sure it was Reagan himself who was into astrology and had a consultant. I've read about this.
There was a consultant, but I thought his wife was the driving force of it, and she
maybe
the whole story is that she was kind of like having heretofore unknown amounts of power over the president by means of astrology, by telling him when he can and can't do things.
That, I think, is actually kind of accurate. I seem to recall reading this, that there was a heavy astrology presence for the two of them, and that they did. It did. I don't know, like, whether you can definitively say it influenced decisions, but they, like, definitely both, I think, were. I'd have to read about that, but I do remember reading about it like years ago. So I'd have to go. Yeah. I'd have to go read about that again. But yeah, that's true. But definitely, I mean, like, I don't think it's like, well, you're a first lady, so you're into spiritualism. I just think that, like, spiritualism was the thing of the time, right? Like, it's sort of the inverse of what they suggest, which is like, the first ladies are going to be into spiritualism, women be shopping or whatever.
It has that vibe.
I think it's just more that spiritualism was pretty popular for everybody who had a particular religious belief. It doesn't really matter what your gender is.
I really do enjoy them also just randomly for like 10 seconds throwing in the stone tape theory.
Oh yeah, that's right. Very briefly, out of nowhere, they talk about how physical objects can, like, record, like, energies or whatever the theory is, but they don't really go into it. They just, like, mention that it's a theory.
They just bring it up like it's a thing that you should know about, and then go, well, the White House is the focal point of the world, an actual sentence uttered in this documentary. So that therefore all bad things that happen across the world descend their dark energies onto the focal point of the White House.
The White House is itself sort of are we sure they said stone tape and not stoned ape? And they weren't like, you need to be so stoned you go ape to watch this documentary?
It's so fucked up that is like a thing you could very reasonably garble in subtitle dictation.
Yeah.
Now, were you saying stone tape or stoned ape? I believe they were talking about the stone tape theory.
Both incredible theories that we love.
I've almost tried to do. I've started looking into the stoned ape theory a little bit to see if, but like, Joe Rogan has fucking, like, burned that bridge so hard that you cannot do research on the stoned ape theory without, like, getting just articles about Joe Rogan. Yeah. And I really hate reading that shit.
Yeah. Look, he's kind of captured that one away from he looks like an ape, so we might as well just leave it to him.
Yeah.
So to finish up with the Pierce story.
Oh yeah.
There's, like, one of the other big things that they do is they hint that Jane, that's her name, right? Jane Pierce, she, like, might be a ghost that haunts the White House. There was something about her playing. I think she liked to play piano, and she, they also at one point cut to what's her name, Bush's daughter, saying,
Bush,
saying like, we heard piano playing from nowhere while we were at the White House. That place is haunted. So they connect. She
specifically said 1920s music, which is funny when we're talking about 1860s person. But I understand that, Jenna Bush may not have her decades of music theory.
We don't know.
But
Jane Pierce could have kept up with the musical trends and played like piano renditions. You hear she's like
a lot of like French pop piano pop stuff, you know?
I heard that they play. I actually heard the disembodied sound of a piano a few years ago in the White House playing Clocks by Coldplay. They
just a dude in a powdered wig pounding at fucking clocks in the White House is really a funny image.
So yeah, she like died and became a ghost, and you know, fucking Franklin Pierce was sad and had a bad time, and kind of caused problems that would like cause the Civil War tensions to build. So then we have Abraham Lincoln, who we need to talk about. Coolest president, maybe one of the coolest presidents we've had, I think. First of all, I gotta say, the guy that they got plus his wife, the reenactment actors nail it. They are they look like what's his wife's name? I knew this. Abe Lincoln's wife, and which I feel terrible that I'm not naming her. She Mary Todd Lincoln. So
I was looking through my notes trying to find it.
Yeah. So Abe and Mary Todd Lincoln, like their reenactment actors are very good and look exactly like them. And the Lincoln stuff is genuinely interesting. It's like, so a lot of it is talking about him inheriting the stressful mess of the presidency at the time and how fucked up everything is, and Civil War, etc. You know, like that's all classic Lincoln stuff. They bring up a thing that I'd heard about, and then I went and double checked, and it's actually true. He saw a portent that he believed to be of his own death in the mirror, like a mirror image of himself that was fucked up.
Yep.
What I was sort of reading was people were pointing to, like, I think he actually sees it twice, right? So he sees in the mirror, and it was okay. It's like I have both of them here. So Ward Hill Lamon, who is a friend of Lincoln's, wrote down something that Lincoln told him in 1865, and this is words from Ward Lamon that they say was what Lincoln said, which is, quote, "About 10 days ago, I retired very late. I soon began to dream. There seemed to be a death-like stillness about me. Then I heard subdued sobs as if a number of people were weeping. I thought I left my bed and wandered downstairs. I arrived at the East Room. Before me was a catafalque on which rested a corpse wrapped in funeral vestments. Around it were stationed soldiers who were acting as guards, and there was a throng of people, some gazing mournfully upon the corpse, whose face covered, others weeping pitifully. 'Who is dead in the White House?' I demanded of one of the soldiers. 'The president,' was his answer. 'He was killed by an assassin.'" So that's the story that's told, but what I think is important to note here is this is a story that is told by a person who is a friend of Lincoln's and claiming this is something Lincoln told him. Mm-hmm. So I don't know whether you can like directly attribute that to Lincoln as like totally authentic, but the documentary does. So
yeah, they have a reenactment of it and everything. Pretty fun.
And again, really good. All the Lincoln stuff I really loved, because that's a thing. It's a story. I don't know whether we can confirm it, but after he was elected, that's when he sees the double image of his face in the mirror that he thought was like gaunt and pale and fucked up. And he takes that as sort of an omen.
Now, a second ago, you mentioned, a thing.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important to talk about the thing.
Sure.
Which gets brought up in the middle of the Lincoln
yes.
section here. And we're not talking about John Carpenter's classic film or the 2013 reboot or even the original Howard Hawks.
Thing from Outer Space, yeah.
We're talking about the Thing, which is the unnamed or unidentified, mainly paranormal presence that haunts the White House.
Yeah,
that was supposedly felt by a staffer at the time of Lincoln and has since been felt other places. Yeah, whatever in times since.
Yeah, A staffer. I mean, I didn't find anything on this. I don't know about the White House thing. I will admit, very hard thing to Google.
Yeah, not an easy one.
You know, I mean, like, I just feel like an old house that has all this stuff, the stories will spread and believers will tell you stories about like, ooh, I felt a chill or whatever. But they tell the story of they make it seem like Lincoln and Abe and Mary Todd's son is visited by this paranormal thing, and that like people would claim that it would like press down on your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And in the reenactment, they basically show that like there's a demon in the room with the child of the Lincolns, and when he turns around, it's the little kid.
Yeah, and so the thing ends up. Some person, there's a woman that they cite who worked at the White House in some capacity, I think in the janitorial staff or something, maid type position, who is quoted as saying that the thing looked like a blonde-haired boy.
Yeah.
And so they then start to bring back Franklin Pierce's son, Benny, with the spooky face occasionally, to be the representation of the thing whenever it's not a like ceiling height sized black blob.
Oh yeah, they usually show it as like a cloaked dark figure with like red orange glowing eyes, which I liked. But sometimes it's a child, right? So like again, it's the insinuation that like, well, maybe it's not actually the ghost of a child. Maybe it's a demonic presence that latched onto the people who have experienced this tragedy. Yeah. And so they like bring that back with that loose thread there.
That is maybe my favorite part about this documentary, is that they are the ones who told me that there is a child ghost in the White House. And then halfway through the documentary, they go, but if it's not a child ghost, it could actually be a demon acting like a child ghost to influence world politics.
Yeah, I mean, we're just kind of...
it's like, you set up the premise, and then you yanked it out from under me for something else.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah. It's pretty wild. But Niall, did you consider the fact that the Lincolns lost their son when he was 11 to disease, and that's the same age that the Pierces lost their son, and that has to be a connection of some demonic paranormal kind? Like, have you considered that, Niall?
I've thought long and hard on it, and I think that everything Lincoln does should be attributed to demons. No, it's just like I keep yelling at this documentary, but I did enjoy it. Like it says such ridiculous things so casually, and then just moves on.
Yeah,
that like. You end up just going, wait, what was that? I had to stop it and go back like multiple times to like on various points throughout the documentary just to like make sure I heard some talking head correctly.
Yeah.
It's a fun time.
Yeah, it's very funny, but yeah, it's based on actually nothing.
They link the two kids, the boy, Lincoln's son gets typhoid. And they say typhoid can cause hallucinations. And then it cuts to a reenactment of the ghost of Benny with spooky face, like menacing Willie Lincoln. Yeah. And it's unintentionally really fucking funny. I'm not, look, child death is not funny to me in general.
Okay.
But the way that they will just say something ridiculous and then cut to a reenactment of said thing happening with a fully straight face is very funny.
Yes. No, it's the way it's laid out is really absurd. Like, I don't know. It's such a fucking split thing, this documentary. Like, can we call it a documentary? Because
I think so, yeah.
They just so quickly and often leave reality and are talking about their own personal speculations about things that like you said, like the actual historical true things that are so few and far between at a certain point. Like if you boiled it down to the actual historical stuff that they're pulling from, it it would be like a 20-minute documentary, maybe.
Yeah, it would be a short.
But yeah, so the other thing this is the thing that I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit. That a guy in the documentary, I think one of the paranormal researchers, just straight up says Lincoln actually wasn't concerned about slavery. He was just concerned about unifying, keeping the states unified. I don't think that's true at all. So like, I'm not going to like cite any specific thing. I think what this person is getting this from is that there is some contention around Lincoln's like beliefs about slavery. Like let's be very clear here. Like from the start of his political career, he was like an outspoken abolitionist. He said something to the effect of like, it was basically like one of the things that people will point to where they're just like, well, what did he actually believe, is like he makes a statement that was basically this suggestion of like political practicality and expediency to like keep the states unified in a way. Like I'm kind of speaking out of my ass here because like I'm not a historian, but like he spoke out about as an abolitionist the entire time he was, working on his political career. And then he would make comments in speeches where he would be like, it was like the nation is divided. Let no man judge another man. But I do believe God has judged the North and the South for slavery, is like what he said. Like, it's just so clear to me that he was an anti-slavery guy. But it's like, it's a debate. It's like it reminded me, actually, I had a really insane conversation a number of years ago, and you can maybe guess when this conversation happened. But I had a conversation with a friend of mine who is the type of guy who like is not politically active, doesn't pay attention. And he like randomly started this conversation with me where he was just like, actually, did you know the Civil War wasn't about slavery, and the South actually didn't fight about slavery? That's not what it was about, actually. And actually, it was the Democrats who were into slavery. And I just like, it was a moment in my life where like I knew he was wrong. Nothing I said to him could convince him otherwise. And it was just completely ahistorical. And it was like this moment where I realized like, oh yeah, okay, so the narrative, the like control of like a narrative has been completely lost. And this was like my first interaction with people who just, you just can't reason with them about actual historical. And so my point, the point that I'm getting to is this guy saying this is fucked up because it's wrong. They're like, it's coming from somewhere, and but it's incorrect to frame it that way. And hopefully, I don't know. It's just the kind of thing where it's like the narrative is so lost that like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm getting at. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? I get what you mean.
Yeah, it's like, it's the whole "do we live in a post-truth era" kind of comment, and that feels like an early shot across the bow.
Yeah.
Of people not being overtly concerned with context nor historical fact. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And this documentary definitely has some moments like that where it's just like, you have to be very much ignoring a lot of historical fact and just common knowledge to just make these very, very vague, broad, nebulous, dark suppositions.
Yeah. Well, and that brings me to the other thing, which is like, one of the things that this documentary does that I hated is they're like, I don't think they straight up say like, oh, well, the country is divided. They say something like that. And they'll show, like, when they're talking about demonic influences in the fucking White House, demonic influences changing the course of history, they'll like flash clips of like Black Lives Matter, of like protesters. And that is a fucking
insidious bullshit,
very dangerous thing to make it sound like the decisions. I don't know. It's like, if you probably get where I'm going with this. It was a very insane angle here, and especially insane to like to put out this like revisionist history about Lincoln, spoken from the words of a paranormal investigator, as if it's like fact. It's like, that really irked me.
It's this documentary rides such a line of being just innocuous enough that I didn't get super mad at it while I was going. If this documentary like crossed the line a step further than it does, we would be having a very different podcast right now. It is so inept in its conclusions and everything that it skates under that line for me.
Yeah.
But it comes so close to saying some really
shit
fucking
that I
insidious,
really didn't like.
Bullshit.
Yeah. So the whole Lincoln angle is like, he saw his own death.
Yeah.
He predicted it, which like, not exactly accurate the way that played out.
Well, and also a fucking guy who, one of his mediums that came to the White House, was involved with John Wilkes Booth, Kyle.
Right. Which the guy who, the guy who wrote about, I need to read this book now, but the guy who wrote The President's Medium is, I think, the guy who was saying that. And I was sort of looking at that, and it was genuinely interesting, but I can't like speak to how true it was yet, because I need to learn more about what he was talking about.
So you may not say that this statement that I copied down verbatim from the documentary is true, that it's widely believed that John Wilkes Booth was under the influence of demonic or satanic forces.
Okay, sure. It's not so much that,
widely
it's just
believed.
The medium's involvement with White House goings on is sort of what I'm referring to. But that I think we can firmly dismiss. Although it is funny that we're like coming off an episode where we talked about John Wilkes Booth's dad, who was under demonic influence. So honestly, we might be fucking wrong. We might be just totally off. Like, this might be a completely unfair reading. If you haven't listened to the, I think, previous episode about Planters Hotel, and the Dock Street Theater, like John Wilkes Booth's dad was like I guess an angry man whose ghost haunts that place. So like, what do we know?
An actor that almost killed the proprietor of the hotel,
allegedly,
in a rage.
Allegedly. To say that John Wilkes Booth had a demonic counsel whispering in his ear is a little bit much. I do think it has a little bit more to do with sympathy for the South than it does for demonic influence. But again, I don't know what's true anymore. And truth really at the end of the day doesn't matter much when you got demons causing all kinds of chaos. What is true, And most importantly, everybody's got their own truth. What you think is true, and what I think is true is true. It doesn't matter if it's in conflict. So,
because facts are just opinions that you can argue about,
Yeah. And I would say facts care deeply about your feelings, but I know some other political types who would argue the opposite. Sorry.
I started out this episode very like up, and the more you talk about, like, the more we talk about this stuff, the more it's just like, is this actually depressing?
No, here's the thing. It's very much like if you have your brain set on a dot, like if you can put your brain and its receptiveness for bullshit and tweak its dial down a little bit, you can enjoy this comfortably. But if you think at all, if you have any amount of thoughts going on in your head and you watch this, you're just like, that's bullshit. I know it's bullshit, and the implications are fucking weird. Like that's all I'm saying here. Like I did start off by saying I loved it because I kind of did, but it was almost like I almost would rather you do a fictionalized account of this scenario of the Pierces like bringing a demon into the White House accidentally by trying to contact their dead son, and then how Abraham Lincoln then has to not only inherit the Civil War era presidency, but also inherit the demon that they left behind.
And in that movie, you should also get Russell Crowe to play the Exorcist,
and
because he's been on a real run of that lately, and I think it would be great.
And like, just think about how great the metaphor of a demon could be for like having to inherit the presidency during like Civil War time. It's perfect. I mean, is that not what the paranormal and ghosts and demons are like these metaphor for like irrational darkness in humanity? Is that not what it is? Like, because that's kind of how I read it in a way. Like,
and to exorcise the demon out of the White House, you have to fire 2 lead bullets at each other, fired by brothers, so that they meet in midair on the ghost.
Yeah, in my version of that movie, that the fictionalized account I just described, Abraham Lincoln has a really badass duel with a demon, like 19th century style.
Okay, Kyle, do we know that this isn't what the movie Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter is about?
God, Jesus Christ. I thought you were going to say the Abraham Lincoln Spielberg movie, but that's a good point too.
I know what that one's about.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen it.
Jules loves that movie. But I did just remember that movie exists.
Yeah, I forgot about
Lincoln
that.
Vampire Hunter one. And now I kind of am curious if it's about, insidious dark forces trying to take control of the White House in this time period.
Niall, when you're right. That's a good point. I hadn't considered
maybe Benny's a vampire,
That's fuck. Benny didn't die. He just had to go live in the walls so his parents couldn't find out that he's an undead child of the night.
Exactly.
And then Benny visits.
Okay, we cracked it.
What's the Lincoln's son's name?
Willie.
Willie. So then Benny goes to visit Willie, and he's like, I can make you I want to show you the do you want to live forever? And Benny's like, I got typhoid and it fucking sucks. Give it to him. Fucking bite me wherever and just get this over with. And they become a legion of child vampires living in the walls of the White House. Okay, I would watch this movie 100%.
Yeah, I think this works. I think this is what that movie is about, and also what it should be about.
Okay. What the fuck else is there to say about the Lincoln stuff?
I mean, there was a thing about a ghost photo that, like, and because the ghost was underneath the window of the Lincoln bedroom, that means that it's one of these dead children.
Right.
Like, they tried really hard to make this ghost photo seem important.
They literally have people saying, we have evidence now. Yeah. Hard evidence.
No, we don't.
We don't. There is no hard evidence. This is, like, the ghost angle of this documentary is weak, but highly entertaining. And stupid. So.
Oh, and also at the very end, they rip the rug out from under you again by saying it may not just be a demon, but it might actually be an elemental. Oh, yeah. No context given. Nothing.
Yeah.
They just up the power level and then leave you hanging.
Speaking of up the power level, last thing I kind of want to bring up.
Go for it.
They insinuate early on in the documentary that if a demon's goal is to cause chaos and suffering and mass death, of course you're going to go to a highly influential focal point in the world. The United States, one of the most powerful nations in the world.
And the White House is the center of the world, as it says in this documentary multiple times.
Yeah. Yeah. The world kind of revolves around the United States, which, like, as an American, we all know this. They point out, one of my favorite things that they say in this is they're just like, hey, why wouldn't a demon want to get its grippers on a president who has access to the nuclear codes?
Yeah.
They could just blow up the entire fucking planet. If a demon can influence all this shit, why did the Cold War... Like, why hasn't the Earth been blown up a million times over if this is what the demons are trying to do? Like,
all those thoughts and prayers are doing something. They're keeping the demonic forces in the White House contained.
Okay, fair enough.
They can only sign executive orders that that make life worse for their own, for the citizens of the United States. They can't actually start a nuclear war.
I always get so pissed off with the thoughts and prayers shit because it's like, man, what do you think you're doing? Then I remember, fuck, the nuclear football. Right, they're keeping that at bay. I always forget that. Really important to remember that thoughts and prayers are preventing nuclear annihilation.
So next time someone important or loved dies, and you get that a lot from people that had a hand in it, just think about the nuclear football.
Yeah, just remember it has to do with nukes and nothing to do with your dead loved one. Yeah. So they say that, and yeah, like, you know, maybe it's possible that, you know, that protesters don't really actually have any sort of meaningful thrust or political hope. They're just kind of chaos because demons are causing that. Do we want to give our review of this now? Is this the first time where we came in going like, this is awesome, I love this, and then by the end it was like, actually, maybe fuck this?
I think it might be like this. I truly am gonna have to think about how to rate this one, because I came in so hot and ended so cold.
Yeah, I think my ultimate takeaway as far as a review is concerned is that you can't show this documentary to stupid people. They'll get stupid ideas, and they'll believe that, you know, they'll get stupid ideas. It's like that Death Grip song. I keep giving bad people good ideas. I keep giving stupid people bad ideas. Is the subtitle of this documentary. Save me now. I don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah. So who this documentary is for someone who's all sleepy and just wants to have something to kind of half pay attention to and laugh at, because you will get enough of that. But if you're in a state where you are actually fully 100% conscious and locked in on this, don't watch it. Watch something else. This is something that you watch the way you turn on an episode of Ancient Aliens.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, this documentary is for what Niall just described. I would also recommend it to people who are doing like a couple whippets right before watching it, and just kind of like put yourself in the right state of mind to not just, you know, to have a good time.
You might actually see the thing if you do whippets and watch this documentary. You might be confronted by Benny. So if that happens to you, email us.
So Niall, this is the part where we attempt to review the documentary by saying fuck your documentary using only intonation, which is a weird thing we have been doing, and I'm really like I'm now stretching this idea thin because I don't know how to do it for this one. Do you have
we really kind of hung ourselves a little bit with this idea early on, because I also do not know how to encapsulate my feelings on this documentary in 3 words.
I will give it a shot, okay? And it'll try to capture the experience of watching the documentary and then not really thinking about the documentary and then thinking about it and then reading Wikipedia about it and then coming to you and talking about it and starting off hot, ending up cold. That's what what I'm about to, the 3 words I'm about to say, all intonation will explain those feelings to you out there. Okay?
Okay. I'm excited.
Fuck your documentary.
Okay, so kind of a constipated.
Yeah, a little constipated, I guess. That's my best. That's my best, I think, review that I can give.
I'm going to go ahead and go a little bit more, a little different with mine, and just we're going to give this a shot. Fuck your documentary.
That's
a little clown, a little goof, a little loud frustration.
Yeah, and I liked how you cupped your hands over your mouth to sort of represent the cave that Plato sort of suggests. All the false images are sort of, you know, your hands were the cave, and I'm glad that came through. You were the voice of the one speaking through to the cave, so that's a very uplifting message. We should try to pull the people who are looking at the images on the screen on the cave wall. In this instance, the images being a documentary that's like pretty fucking stupid, and we need to pull them out and save them.
Well, I'm glad that came through, but I must have mistimed it just a little bit because what I was going for was a train conductor on the train that flipped and killed Benny. Because that was the tone that I was trying to commit. And I think that it went a little more philosophical than I intended.
Niall's over here like, oh, child death is never funny, and then cracks the funniest child death joke of the episode. So kudos to you. I respect that play.
Look, I had to have one decent joke in this episode because it hasn't gone well for me so far.
No, you're doing great. And I think we're going to continue to do great as we read this business. I got lost there for a second. It's time for some business, Niall.
Hey, don't worry. I got you.
Thank you.
So if you want to follow us on social media, we're on Twitter at IGW Podcast.
You can follow us on Facebook.com/itgetsweirdpodcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird, and we're almost certainly there.
You can follow us on itgetsweird.bluesky.social or whatever that it's itgetsweird.bsky.social. Trying to move over there from Twitter because Twitter is just a trash heap. We also have twitch.tv/itgetsweird where I have been streaming. I stream with friend of the show Colin sometimes playing Elden Ring. I'm actually going to be playing some Baldur's Gate 3 on there as well. So please check that out. It's a lot of fun, and you can also jump in the chat and chat with me while I play. It's a good time, but had by all. Email us at itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. Let me try that one more time. Email us at itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. If you have a good story or something you want to comment on, or honestly, even a question, you can send us anything to this email as long as it's good and doesn't suck. Just let us know how we have to address you. And we love getting your emails, and we'll read it out on the show if it's a good one. So please hit us up. Let us know. Finally, and I would say most importantly, check out patreon.com/itgetsweird. That's where you're going to get all the bonus content. We have a $1 tier that's just a tip, basically. You don't get any content out of the $1 tier, just saying, hey, like your show, thanks for doing what you do, here's $1. If you do want content, however, and I know you do, we have a $2 tier and a $5 tier. At the $2 tier, you get the show, It Gets Weird TV. Comes out every other week. Niall and I watch weird television, and we talk about it. Right now, we are going through Neon Genesis Evangelion, the anime, which has been a lot of fun. And you get to vote on what weird TV show we watch next. We've watched a lot of other stuff on this series, the X-Files, like 2 seasons of the X-Files. We watched Demi Lovato's Thing show. We watched Unexplained. Yeah, that's what it was. We watched a season of Supernatural. We watched we watched all of Gravity Falls. We watched Project Blue Book, lots of stuff. So tons of back catalog episodes for you. If you want even more than that, though, and I know you do, there's the $5 tier. You get access to It Gets Weird TV plus another bonus show that we do in the off weeks of It Gets Weird TV that we're calling World of Weird, where Niall and I kind of just get to talk about whatever we want. It's kind of like the tangents that we go on main episodes of the show, but for a full hour. And it's a lot of talk about movies, Godzilla. I bring up UFOs pretty regularly, just the stuff that we're interested in. And it's a really good time. The series is like in its infancy too. So like you have time now to just get on board, before it becomes a long-running series. So check out the $5 tier. Whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to the main show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday on your own special Patreon feed. And you get access to the Discord where we're hanging out, chatting with the listeners, people telling us all kinds of cool shit in there, talking to us about Bigfoot, about UFOs, whatever you want. So please check out patreon.com/itgetsweird. If you can't donate, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird podcast.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for continuing to support the show. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle, signing out.